Avoid these 6 dangerous personalities, Carl Jung's critical advice. There's a silent war waging inside all of us. It's not the kind of war that makes headlines or fills history books. It's deeper, quieter, more dangerous. It's a psychological battlefield where the enemy often looks like a friend, or worse, looks like you. Today, we're diving into Carl Jung's chilling warnings about 6 types of personalities that can destroy your life and the lives of those around you. And the scariest part, these personalities don't always wear masks. Sometimes they smile, sometimes they love, and sometimes they're hiding inside you. Jung wasn't warning us out of fear. He was warning us out of necessity. Because if we want to live a life of depth, of meaning, of clarity, we have to learn how to see the darkness, not just in the world, but in ourselves. And right now, I want to make a deal with you. Stay with me through this journey. For the next few minutes, give me your full attention. Suspend your assumptions about people, and even more importantly, about yourself. Because by the end of this, you may not see your friends, your enemies, or your own reflection the same way again. Let's begin with a simple but terrifying truth Jung gave us. The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. That means every person you allow into your life has the power to alter you permanently. So, what happens when that person is toxic? Or worse, when that person thrives on your weakness, uses your goodness, your loyalty, your empathy as weapons against you? That brings us to the first dangerous personality, the manipulative empath. At first glance, they seem like the best person you've ever met. They're sensitive, they listen, they feel deeply. But here's the catch: they use their empathy as a tool of control. Jung would say this person is in deep psychological shadow. They've suppressed their inner power so much, they resort to emotional blackmail to feel safe. They don't set boundaries, they create emotional traps. Have you ever felt like someone was always the victim, even when they were clearly the one causing pain? That's not an accident. That's a tactic. These people weaponize their wounds. They make you feel guilty for not saving them, even when they're the ones sinking your ship. Now take a breath, because it's easy to spot this in others, but harder, infinitely harder to ask, have I ever been this person? Have I ever used my pain to manipulate someone else's sympathy? Have I ever guilt-tripped someone into staying, into caring, into forgiving? The second dangerous personality is the eternal child. Jung called this the pure Eternus, the person who refuses to grow up. But they chase freedom, excitement, spontaneity. On the surface, they're fun, adventurous, the life of the party. But beneath that glow is a deep refusal to take responsibility. They fear commitment, not just in relationships, but in purpose, in discipline, in identity. But they live in a perpetual adolescence, not because they can't grow, but because they refuse to. Jung believed this archetype hides a terror of death, a fear that growing up means giving something up. But real life, real meaning, requires sacrifice. Maturity demands loss. So this personality avoids all of it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Think about someone in your life who always seems stuck at 22, even if they're 42. They talk about dreams but never act. They start things they never finish. They promise the world, but can't even show up on time. And here's the hard truth: If you're always the one picking up their pieces, you're not helping, you're enabling. Jung warned that surrounding yourself with people who refuse to carry their own weight will eventually crush you under theirs. The third dangerous personality is the Narcissistic Shadow. This one's truly terrifying, not just because it's powerful, but because it's often invisible. Jung taught that every person has a shadow, the rejected parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. But when someone refuses to even see their shadow, something darker forms, narcissism. These people lack true self-awareness. They don't just avoid blame, they project it. Every mistake is someone else's fault. Every failure is a conspiracy. They cannot be wrong. And here's the paradox: the more confident they appear, the more fragile they truly are. Their ego isn't a fortress, it's a bubble. One prick of truth and it bursts. What's worse, narcissistic shadows often become leaders. They crave control, admiration, loyalty. They paint themselves as visionaries, prophets, geniuses. But they can't handle criticism, question, or contradiction. Jung warned that this kind of person can rise quickly in society because they know how to manipulate perception. But over time, they destroy everything around them: families, teams, communities, because they can't tell the difference between truth and flattery. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly reflected on your flaws, not to shame yourself, but to understand them? Because if we don't confront our own shadows, we risk becoming the very thing we fear. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's not just a quote, that's a warning. And this is just the beginning. The three personalities we've explored today, the Manipulative Empath, the Eternal Child, the Narcissistic Shadow, are only half of the puzzle. But already you can feel how dangerous these types are. Not because they're monsters, but because they're human. Because they're familiar. Because sometimes they're us. And now we're about to go even deeper. Because the next three personalities Jung warned us about aren't just dangerous, they're seductive. They offer you power, control, even love. But the price you pay is your soul. The masks of power, how dangerous people lure you in with control, charm, and chaos. Now we enter the more insidious realm of Jung's warning, the personalities that don't just hurt you through weakness or emotional confusion, but those who intoxicate you with power, with charm, with the illusion of certainty. These are the personalities you might admire at first. You might even fall in love with them. But Jung understood something most people miss, that the most dangerous people in our lives are rarely those who seem overtly threatening. They're the ones who offer us something we've always longed for: clarity, validation, structure, and then use that longing to enslave us. The fourth dangerous personality is the tyrannical father. This isn't necessarily a man, nor is it limited to literal fathers. It's an archetype, and it can appear in a boss, a teacher, a partner, even a friend. Jung saw this figure as the dark side of order. The tyrannical father imposes rules not to protect, but to dominate. He demands obedience, not out of wisdom, but out of fear. He thrives on hierarchy, on control, on the illusion of moral superiority. He tells you what's best for you not because he knows, but because he can't tolerate your autonomy. The terrifying part of this personality is that it often appears during times of chaos. When things fall apart, we crave order. And the tyrannical father gives us that at a cost. He gives us rules, but no room to breathe. He gives us structure, but no space to grow. He gives us answers, but punishes our questions. And here's the trap: if you disobey, you're made to feel foolish or ungrateful, even evil. Jung saw this figure not just in families, but in political systems, religious institutions, and even personal relationships. And he warned that when we are afraid, truly afraid, we will trade our freedom for the illusion of safety. So ask yourself, have you ever submitted to someone not because they were right, but because they were loud? Have you ever silenced your own voice just to keep the peace? Have you ever called someone wise when deep down you knew they were just controlling? This personality isn't just dangerous because it dominates others, it's dangerous because it trains you to dominate yourself. Let's now explore the anarchic trickster, the fifth dangerous personality. This is the opposite of the tyrannical father, but no less destructive. The trickster is chaos disguised as creativity. At first, they seem liberating. They challenge norms, break rules, throw off convention. They make you feel alive, seen, free. But underneath that freedom is a deep contempt for truth. The trickster doesn't want to free you, they want to unmoor you. They want to pull you away from everything stable, everything sacred, everything ordered, not to help you evolve, but to leave you lost. Jung saw the trickster as a necessary force in the psyche, a disruptor of stagnation. But when that energy dominates, it becomes toxic. The trickster laughs at commitment. They mock responsibility. They seduce you into thinking that cynicism is wisdom and that rebellion is always noble. But not all rebellion is intelligent. Not all chaos is creative. Sometimes it's just destruction with good marketing. And the most dangerous part: the trickster doesn't just lie to others. They lie to themselves. They convince themselves that their recklessness is brilliance, that their impulsiveness is passion, that their selfishness is authenticity. Have you ever followed someone because they seemed fearless only to realize they were just reckless? Have you ever mistaken someone's instability for artistic genius? Or worse, have you ever sabotaged your own life in the name of freedom when what you really feared was responsibility? And that brings us to the sixth and final dangerous personality Jung warned us about, the possessed idealist. This one is perhaps the most tragic. This is the person who is consumed by a cause, an ideology, a belief system so completely that they lose touch with reality. Their intentions may begin as noble. They want to change the world. They want justice, equality, truth. But over time, their identity fuses with their beliefs. And when identity fuses with belief, something terrifying happens. Disagreement becomes betrayal. Dissent becomes heresy. And the idealist becomes a crusader. Jung saw this in political revolutions, religious extremism, even academic culture. He warned that when a person believes they are fighting only for good, they become blind to their own capacity for evil. They justify cruelty in the name of righteousness. They dehumanize those who disagree. And they no longer serve the truth, they serve their truth. You've seen this before, people so convinced of their moral purity that they become monstrous. They cancel, destroy, or manipulate others not in spite of their ideals, but because of them. This personality is dangerous because it doesn't look dangerous. It looks noble, passionate, even heroic. But it's self-righteousness without self-reflection. And without self-reflection, no amount of goodness can save you from yourself. So now we've surfaced all 6 dangerous personalities. We've seen how they show up in our lives, not as villains, but as archetypes, as patterns, as energies that can possess anyone, even us. Jung didn't expose these types to scare us. He exposed them so we could wake up. Because these personalities aren't just other people, they're potential modes within us. They're masks the unconscious wears when we stop being vigilant. But now, we must take this one step further. If these dangerous personalities live inside us, how do we confront them? How do we protect ourselves and others? How do we integrate the shadow instead of being ruled by it? The mirror and the abyss, how to recognize the shadow within yourself before it destroys you. Now that we've exposed these 6 dangerous personalities, the natural instinct is to look outward, but to diagnose our friends, our bosses, our exes, to say, yes, that person was the manipulative empath, or I've dated the trickster, or my father was the tyrannical one. But Jung's deepest insight wasn't about identifying others. It was about confronting ourselves. The shadow isn't just something you notice in the world, it's something you carry within. And if you don't face it, it will face you. At the worst possible time. In the worst possible way. This is where most people stop. They consume the psychology, the wisdom, the archetypes, but they never ask the most important question: where am I in all this? Jung wasn't creating a catalogue of dangerous people for you to judge. He was giving you a mirror, and that mirror is brutal. Because it shows you not just who you are, but who you could become if you're not careful. Every personality we've talked about, the empath, the child, the narcissist, the tyrant, the trickster, the idealist, lives in potential inside each of us. The question isn't whether it's there. The question is, have you met it yet? You see, the shadow isn't evil. It's unconscious. It's the part of you that acts without your permission. It's the thoughts you suppress, the desires you deny, the power you disown. And the more you reject it, the more it controls you. That's why people who see themselves as good can become dangerous. Because they don't believe they're capable of harm. So when harm inevitably happens because no one is perfect, they blame others. Or they rationalize. Or they disappear into guilt. Anything but face the truth. I have darkness too. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this, not just hear it. When was the last time you lied to protect your image? When was the last time you manipulated someone not maliciously, but subtly to get the outcome you wanted? When was the last time you avoided responsibility by hiding behind charm or humor or intellect? When was the last time you believed you were right and treated someone else as if they were beneath you because of it? These aren't accusations, they're invitations to see, to feel, to integrate. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In other words, true growth isn't about becoming more good, it's about becoming more whole. And wholeness demands that we embrace the parts of ourselves that scare us, the parts we've exiled, the parts we've judged. So how do we do that? How do we face the shadow without being swallowed by it? First, we develop radical self-honesty. We stop pretending to be better than we are. Not in a shameful way, but in a courageous way. We admit when we're envious, when we're power-hungry, when we're lazy, when we're judgmental. We name it, and in naming it, we take away its secret power. Second, we create space for reflection, not scrolling, not reacting, real reflection, time with your own thoughts, time in solitude, a time in journaling or meditation or therapy. Not to fix yourself, but to meet yourself. To ask not just what do I want, but why do I want it? Not just what did I do, but what part of me did that? This kind of inner inquiry isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. Because until we understand ourselves, we are vulnerable to being hijacked by our own unconscious patterns. Third, we practice humility. The awareness that we are not always the hero in every story. That we are capable of being wrong, even when we mean well. That our intentions don't erase our impact. That we are works in progress, not finished masterpieces. Humility doesn't mean self-loathing. It means openness. Openness to feedback. Openness to growth. Openness to being a student of our own lives. And finally, we commit to integration. Integration means bringing all parts of ourselves into consciousness, not to act on them, but to know them, but to understand them, to give them a seat at the table without letting them drive the car. The shadow doesn't want to be in control, it just wants to be seen. And once it's seen, it becomes part of your strength, not your sabotage. So, as we continue this journey, don't just look for these 6 personalities in your relationships. Look for them in your reactions, in your fears, in your fantasies. Because the person you are today is not the end of your story. And if you're not actively working with your shadow, it's working on you. Becoming whole, how integrating your shadow unlocks your power, wisdom and freedom. If you've made it this far, you've already done something most people never do. You've dared to look into the abyss of the human psyche. You've walked through the terrain of the 6 dangerous personalities Carl Jung warned us about, not just as observers, but as potential participants. And now, the final question remains: what do we do with all of this? Do we hide from the shadow? Do we try to eliminate it? No, we integrate it, because only by becoming whole can we become truly free. Integration is not perfection. It's not about becoming flawless or never making mistakes. In fact, it's the opposite. Integration is the courageous act of accepting every part of yourself, your light and your dark, and choosing to live with conscious awareness. Jung believed that wholeness was the goal of life, not happiness, not success. Wholeness, that means becoming fully who you are, not just the parts that are praised, but the parts that are hidden, rejected, misunderstood. And when you do that, something extraordinary happens. Your shadow stops controlling you. It starts informing you. Think about the manipulative empath. When integrated, this person becomes a true healer. But they use their emotional depth not to guilt others, but to understand and support them. The eternal child, when integrated, becomes a visionary, joyful, creative, full of wonder and grounded in responsibility. The narcissistic shadow transforms into authentic confidence, someone who can lead without dominating, who can shine without needing to steal light from others. The tyrannical father, when brought into balance, becomes the wise elder, someone who offers structure and guidance without crushing the spirit. The anarchic trickster becomes the sacred fool, someone who challenges dogma and inspires growth without creating chaos for its own sake. And the possessed idealist. They become the compassionate warrior, fighting for justice with humility, with an open mind, and with the ability to see humanity even in their opponents. This is the path of integration. It's not easy. It demands awareness, effort, and sometimes brutal honesty. But it also offers liberation, because once you stop running from your shadow, you stop being afraid of it. And once you stop being afraid of it, you stop projecting it onto others. Your relationships improve. Your decisions become wiser. Your inner world becomes quieter. And you begin to live from a place of conscious choice, not unconscious reaction. So I want to leave you with one final question. That it's not rhetorical. I want you to really sit with it. What part of you have you been most afraid to meet? And what might your life look like if you finally turned toward it instead of away? Jung said, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. The awakening doesn't happen in one moment. It happens every time you choose awareness over denial, wholeness over perfection, courage over comfort. This isn't just psychology, it's a way of being. Avoid these 6 dangerous personalities in others, and even more importantly, in yourself. Because the person you are becoming is not defined by what you avoid, but by what you integrate. Thank you for walking this path with me. Now go meet your shadow and become whole.